गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम तत्सत्. So let me share the page. We have done the verse number. So if you remember, we were doing some special discussions on the verse number 11, 12, and 13 in the last class. That we discussed about the two aspects of Maya, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti and Maya Shakti is the creative force of God, but with the same Maya Shakti, because we have to explain as to why all of us are trapped in this samsara, why we are not being able to recognize our Swarupa, because Upanishads say that Bhagwan created all of us and entered into all of us. These are Shruti Vakyas. And in order to explain that, saying that there is a bit of a misunderstanding which is created in us, as a result of which we are not being able to realize our Swarupa. And that is saying this Moho Shakti, Maya has Nirmana Shakti and Moho Shakti, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. So this Avarana Shakti deludes us. We cannot know our Swarupa. And that is explaining Evam Moham Apanna Jivaha. This Jiva that we are created, having caught up in this whole power of delusion, trapped in delusion, mohad anisatam, right? Isha vinnatam upalakshitam idam. So what do you mean by anishatam? Like for example, in everyday conversation, sometimes we refer to a guy, how is he? No, he got destroyed. Nast ho gaya. Did he die or something? No, he's alive. Bekar ho gaya. He's absolutely dysfunctional. Similarly, here he is saying that our Swarupa is that we are not different from the Brahman, but we consider ourselves to be limited beings. We assume ourselves to be weak, and why we think so, that is explaining Magna Bapusi Shochati. Shochati is not thinking, grieving, Shoka, Shochati. He grieves. It's like you have now elections in a few states and the results are going to come out. Some of them will return to power, some of them may lose power, and anybody who loses power, he will grieve because he won't get the attention he was getting earlier. And Magana Bapushi, trapped in this body mind complex, because there is a Dehatma Bodha. This is my, that Tadatmya Bhava. This is my Swarupa. I'm a human being. I have hands and legs. This is my age. I have so many diseases. I need so much of money. I need so much of comfort. All this together taken emanates from our identification with the body. Isa Srishtam Idam Dvaitam Sarvam Uktam Samasatah. Now, from the verse number 1 till now, Dvaita Viveka Prakarana, he is now summarizing that this is how Ishvara Srishti is summarized, starting from verse number 1 till now, because we concluded the previous chapter with a discussion about Bhagavan's Maya Sakti, with which he creates this, and the Panchakosha Viveka. And we discussed as to why, without some kind of a principle of creativity, the principle of conditioning, there would be so much confusion. Because one's qualities will attribute, will belong to another, so there'll be a mayhem, there would be chaos. So we presume this creative principle, which is a metaphysical principle, is a condition, ontological condition of our existence, which decides what will be the nature of our reality. And he's saying sarva muktam samasatah. He's saying asanga chid bhinnatam cha prapya. Our Swarupa is Asangoyam Purusha. And that Chaitanya Bhinnatam praptaha means we are now reducing our self understanding as a body and as a mind, as a social being, as a man. Once we do this, swasya ishvaratam asanga chidrupatvam. What is aswarupa? Ishvaratvam, ishatvam. In fact, you are no different from the Supreme Consciousness. Vedanta teachers keep hammering this into our minds all the time. The water bubble has a very short life. So far, it identifies itself as a water bubble. Once it tells itself, I am water of this whole world, I am water of this ocean, it becomes the ocean. Then it doesn't die, it's not short lived. Much of our agony emanates with out of our identification with this body mind complex. But our Swarupa is Asanga Chidrupa Tvam. Pure consciousness is not conditioned by anything, it's not touched by anything. And then, Cha Ajnatva iti Yavata. So you don't know you have a lot of money in your bank account, but you have forgotten your password. Can you withdraw the money? No. Bapushi Sarira Panjare. This body is like a prison for us. Why? It gives us so many diseases, so many, so many cravings. Magno aham idam mama idamiti. What is this kind of submergence? We will do a bit of deeper reflection right before we go to the Jiva Srishti. Aham idam, mama idam. These are the two levels of our delusion. I am actually pure consciousness, Shivoham, Shivoham. But we say, no, I'm a man, this is my age, these are my requirements, I'm living here, these are the things I require, and these are the things I have. And then we are craving how to fulfill my long list of aspirations. Aham idam, I am this. And then mama idam, I have a family, I have a mother, I have a father, I have a brother, all kinds of things. I have children, I have friends. That is the relational world around us. We are getting conditioned. And in this cobweb of realities that we identify with, decides how we think, how we act, and why we feel miserable. Out of knowledge, no, moha. Evam moho apannah jivaha moho anisatam ishavinnatam upalakshanamidam. That is the first thing, upalakshana. Many other things will follow. You will have fights, you will have ego hassles, you will have attachments, you will have delusions, all things. First thing is you are not Ishvara. That is the first beginning point of our misery. Asangachidrupa भिन्नतां च प्राप्य स्वस्य ईश्वरत्वम् असंगचिद्रूपत्वं च अज्ञत्वा इति यावदि शरीरपञ्जरे मग्न अहम इदं मम इदं इति तादात्म्य and then तादात्म्यादि अभिमानाविष्टः. There is a word called avishta. We'll reflect on all this in a deeper way. You see, Bhagavan, having created us, enters into it, right? Pravishata, he enters. Same thing. Then avishta, same word. The divine consciousness pervades us out of our own ignorance, because we are not being able to remember that the divine consciousness has pervaded all of us. We are now seeing ourselves as left out, uncared for, miserable, helpless. What is the best example? Just imagine that there is a fair, and mother has gone there with a little son who is about 4.5 or 5. And in that big fair, what happens is that the mother is stuck in a certain shop. She's trying to buy something in a lady's corner. She's trying to pick up something. And where is the child? The child has lost touch with the mother and it's crying. And everybody is trying to find out whose baby is this? Why is the boy crying? Who's your mother? He's stealing something. Imagine if it's a big fair like in India, huge one. Then what happens? and they take this baby to the police, or and then the mother is also looking for the child. There's a miserable situation. Now the mother is actually standing only a few meters away from the child, and the mother shouts at him, "What happened? Why are you crying?" Oh my God. Then he comes running to the mother and slaps the mommy, saying, "You abandoned me." No, I didn't abandon you. I said, "You stand here." What is the problem? Now, we are forgetful of our own Swarupa. Even though our Swarupa is very much with us, we are pretending out of ignorance that we are not having that Swarupa, that we have become Jiva, that we are miserable, we have limited time, we have limited resources. All these thoughts are capturing our attention, disabling us from realizing the fact that there is divine presence in us. Yeah. And therefore he's saying, Swasya Ishwaratvam Asangachidrupta below Tadatmyadi Avidya Vimanavishta. Because you identify with your body, with your mind, your tiny, small, big relations around you. You're forgetting the ocean of consciousness that you are. Shochati, Dukkha Paramparam Anubhavati. Each of these words are very powerful. What is the Dukkha Parampara? What is Shochati? Let's look at these issues, each of them. Now, see, to start with, let's first, yeah, just give me 1 second. Uh, where is this? The commentary, yeah. He says the begin. I mean, if we are going by word, the critical thing is what is that? Let's start with the word anishata. Ishata is Ishwaratva, godliness. What is anishata? All our misery emerges of the fact that we are unaware of our divinity and we do not know how to connect with our divinity. I am reminded of a beautiful story always mentioned by Thakur before his devotees. What is the story? One guy once went to Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahansa and asked him, Thakur, please explain to me what is happiness and what is sadness when a person is miserable. Thakur looks at him and without blink of an eye, he just smiles at him and says, You know what is sadness? When a human being gets disconnected with God, he becomes miserable. It sort of reminds us of a very beautiful story about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's a life of both Dvaita and Advaita in his life. There would be moments where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be sitting. If you look at the biography written by Professor Sanyal, who was a professor of English in Ravenshaw College long back, they have a 2 volume on his life. Sometimes he'd be sitting, he's saying, What do you want? You ask, I'll fulfill it. I'm Lord Krishna, there's no difference. And then he would be going to Puri temple and he would be hitting his forehead on a particular piece of rock against the wall of the temple, crying, Krishna, Krishna, where are you? To me, that is the classic explanation of what happens in Vedanta. When the Jiva, he was himself avatar of Lord Krishna, avatar of both Radha and Krishna. But when he's missing out on the presence of Lord Krishna, he's crying. There is Dvaita Bhava, as if he's different from Lord Krishna. He's not. And then he's very quiet. You reconnect. It's like the baby is separate from the mother, the baby cries. Reconnected with mother, the baby is quiet. Exactly, all of us, when we are disconnected from the self awareness about our divinity, starts all our misery. Why? Anishatam praptam. We are no more divine. And therefore, we have the lower nature Sri Aurobindo uses the word higher nature and lower nature. So our lower nature attacks us. What is our higher nature? Oh, in fact, we are no different from the highest nature, which is pure divinity. We are just one expression of that divinity. So, how is it defined in Vedanta? Isha Bhinnata. That you are different from the pure divine self, the Atman, is the mother of all our problem. How is it produced? Because of delusion called moha, that avarana shakti. So when there is swarupa and swabhava, when we forget our swarupa, Ishvara swarupa, we are, what do you call it? Disdainfully condemned to live as animals, live as a human being with limited power, limited resources, short life. And all these descriptions which describe us, which try to capture our existence, doesn't apply to our Swarupa. All these apply to our Swabhava, our appearance, our state of bondage. Done. And then this whole question which was there in the beginning, if Ishvara is omnipresent, he has pervaded all the jivas, why is the jiva so vulnerable? Ajnavrittitva, why is he bowing down to God, looking for his grace? God has entered to him as because of ignorance, because he's not being able to understand it. Yeah. And therefore, there are two levels of our self-awareness and existence, or our process of becoming who we are. At one level, we are autonomous, we are liberated, we are free. When? When we are established in Atmajnana. When we are not established in Atmajnana, our lives are governed by some rules, Prakriti, Trigunatmika Maya, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. And then it's dependent on Papa Punya, past Papa Punya, and all our decisions we take today. And we become Simita. We are Asima. We are unlimited. But we become limited. Yeah. Swarupa is Desakala Vastu Paricheda Sunya. That is our Swarupa. But we become restricted by time, space, our substantive existence. So, the cosmic being of which we are a speck or a spark, we become ordinary, limited, transient, very vulnerable, phenomenological human entities. Yeah, that is how we become sansari, jumping, passing through one state of misery into a feeling of happiness or achievement, then again misery. We are just going and again in circles from one level of existence to another, which is characterized by limitation, restriction, unhappiness. Now, this Anisata is that word upalakshana. Why upalakshana? I was telling you yesterday, in the previous class, Kakavad Devadattasya Griha. Griham. So, if you see, for example, there was a crow sitting on a certain thatched house, it has flown away, and then it leaves a mark, some disturbance on that thatched roof, so you can identify it. A word means there is a description of more, whereas actually one or two words or one or two facts are brought into discussion. The rest is presumed. So, first, Upalakshana means that Anishata, Ishvara Bhinnata, not being able to recognize our divinity, is the beginning of a range of experiences we have. What is essentially described as a miserable existence we have. That is the beginning point. And then what is this Ishvara Bhinnatva? He's saying what? Asanga Chit Bhinnata. Our Swarupa is that, you see, it's Nirguna, Nirakara. But we are with qualities. We are Shaguna, Shakara. Yeah. First, we are different from the Shaguna Ishvara. We are also different from the Nirguna, Brahman, because of this faulty understanding that we have. Ishvara is also pure consciousness. We are also pure consciousness. But we ourselves tie our own consciousness with certain frameworks which are not liberating, frameworks of reference which are putting us in a jail. Let us put it like that. And then this jivatva God has given us, He did not send us as prisoners. He sent us as units of consciousness fully capable of realizing our divinity because He pervaded all of us. But we actually fell into the trap. Yeah. You must have seen those bird traps. So they would have a box and there would be a platform, which is very unstable. They'll put some food grains and the bird comes and sits and then slowly moves. The moment it sits on it, it goes down. He falls into the trap. He's captured. So that's how we have got captured because of our own exercise of freedom. Because this exercise of freedom is not based on self understanding, but based on a misunderstanding of our Swarupa. Now, this is not a very ontological deprivation. Please understand this. It's not fundamentally, God has not created us as such. This is essentially a vulnerability emerging out of the way we know things. It's very epistemic in philosophical, technical language because it's the way we see. The continental philosophers talk about it because to have a language is to have a world. You have NLP, neuro linguistic programming, because what do you mean by reality? It depends on how you describe it. At the beginning and at the end of all we experience, it has to do with our thoughts. So we are, in fact, the creator of this whole universe with our thoughts. And then he's saying, Magna Bapushi, it's like you are merged, drowned in our body. What do you mean by drowned in our body? No, they're talking about essentially this body is like a cage because we get trapped in this consciousness. They always say, no, that there's so many things are happening, that there are a lot of young boys and girls being brainwashed by criminal networks. In UK, there's a discussion about grooming gangs, and you have cyber frauds who call you up, would you like to invest? The purpose is to cheat. How we get into that trap? This one time cheating, much better. But I tell you, the kind of cheating we do onto ourselves is like a process of grooming in which we are the active participants, but we are the ones who are grooming our own consciousness to recognize a much lower edition of who we are. We are restricting ourselves. We are grooming ourselves the wrong way because of a faulty misunderstanding. So this body is like a cage, which means it fixes the spatial and the time horizon. A bird in a cage, it can fly a little in that cage. It cannot have access to the free sky, but it'll have some sky of its own within which you can fly. So you have a bit of autonomy, which is insignificant, and it's not good enough to set you free, for all you know. So your range of movement is decided because of this body, what you can do, where you can go, what you can think about. So far, we are in this Annamaya Kosha, Manamaya Kosha, and we are in Pranamaya Kosha. We are kind of delimited by these three koshas. We are trapped for all time to come. We might think it's like uh, in just think about it. This is mentioned in Vedanta. Many teachers explain it. You know, the bird keeper, there are a lot of these people who catch birds and they trap them and put them in cages. And now the guy who is rearing these birds, like talking birds or parrots and stuff like that, so they put them and they tie a thin thread to their legs. The bird flies a few meters, it can't go any further. So it comes back into that particular thing. And after a few days, the bird keeper now chops that particular thin thread, and yet the bird doesn't flow away. It doesn't fly away. You know why? Because it thinks actually it's tired. We are setting certain limitations on how much we can explore our own freedom. There's a beautiful word in the great existentialist philosopher from France, Jean Paul Sartre, in that book, Nausea. Very depressing book. One has to be careful. I mean, I read it when I was very young, and I fell into depression reading that book. There were two books which were very depressing. The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, and Nausea by Jean Paul Sartre, and you can read it. One book tells as to how absurd our lives are. The other one tells that we are trapped in a certain way. He uses a word called bad faith, a faulty self understanding, as a result of which we are not being able to decide our future. We are not like a pencil. A pencil once made can only write as a pencil, but a human being has enormous amount of freedom. It can explore its own self. Of course, there is a limitation. He's talking about a domain in which they don't have that grand conception of the self as Brahman. But nevertheless, he's using this word called bad faith. Same way, we have in Vedanta this whole idea called avidya. And then we are trapped in this body. So we as occupant of this body become vulnerable. The vulnerability of this physical body becomes our vulnerability. Transient nature of this physical body becomes our transient nature, because this is an imposition we are doing. We are confusing ourselves with flesh and blood and bones. No, that's a physical frame we have. We are not this body. But once we identify, the strong identification takes away all our self awareness as an unlimited piece of consciousness. We are trapped here, but our Swarupa is different. So, this submission of vulnerability is kind of a saturation. You know, like you can soak something in salty water, the whole thing. If you submerge a fruit, let's imagine, in salty and sour water for a long time, then it becomes salty after some time, gets saturated. So we become sansari, we get trapped, we get conditioned by this body mind consciousness. And then what is the outcome of it? That phala, how do you describe our being conditioned? We have aham idam, I am this body, mama idam, this is my wife, this is my husband, this is my job, this is my house, this is my car. And then we are completely trapped. Ahankara and mamakara. Therefore, that word he mentioned there is avishta. Earlier he mentioned God has pervaded us. That particular thing, avesha, pravesha, avishta, same root. Now, divinity entered into all of us. Divinity is present in all of us. But we are trapped by delusion. So we are not, it's like money has got transferred to your bank account, but you don't have the password. So you don't know that you have money in your bank account. It's a little like that. So he's saying tadatmyadi, starting with this body identification. And there are other corollaries of this, other consequences of this misidentification. So we have a range of samsaric errors. It's like one lie leads to 1,000 lies. You have a wrong association. There's a boy and a girl. A boy develops liking for a girl, but they are actually a big mismatch. But he develops liking for it. And then slowly, and so I'm forgetting that name of the movie. I think the long back I had seen a Marathi movie in which there's a great spiritual teacher, and there is a lady with a dance party. You can Google and find the name. I'm not being able to remember it. And he develops a liking for that lady. Once he develops a liking for that lady, he joins that jatra party, that dance groups. He has a dance troupe, and he moves, and then he is reduced to a servant, and he finds that another 3 4 men like that. Who are you? They're all from decent families. They all got enamored with this dance use, this lady, and they all were reduced to her servants. And then what happens is that he goes back to his village in disguise to find out. And he's shocked that he was a man of character. Therefore, the villages of his, I mean, the people of his own village have erected a statue of him and are worshipping him because they thought he has died. He's in tears. Beautiful Vedantic story. Of course, the filmmaker is talking about irony, but how one error of judgment leads to whole range of consequences. One leads to another, and that's what the whole gamut of things happen. Therefore, Magna Bapushi, and then Sochati is grieving. Is there is a dukkha parampara? What is a parampara? It's like a santana. It's a series of errors, like comedy of errors we have seen. The series, it's not one problem that you face. Nothing happens. Once you buy a car, and there are 20 things that comes with it. Everything that we decide, we are choosing another 20 things with it. So this whole sansarana, that we become sansaris. So that dukkha parampara means is not one, plurality of problems, and there is a series of sad experiences we have in life. One leads to another. We It doesn't mean we don't have any experience of sukha. We do have, but all these experiences of sukha are dukkha mishrita because they are followed by some hard experience. Therefore, then how do we reverse this whole clock? Shreyascha Priyascha, what Upanishads say. We actually choose the Priya Marga because of this moha, as a result of which we suffer. So now, if we summarize up to this, all these 3-4 verses, starts with Moha Shakti. Moha Shakti leads to what? Forgetting your Swarupa Jnana. Yeah? The Swarupa Jnana Viraha. Viraha. You become dissociated from your self awareness. Then you have Anishata Prapti. You lose your divinity. And then Magna Bapushi. You identify with your body mind because you forget your spiritual nature. Then what happens? You have Tadatma Abhimana, Aham Idam, Mama Idam. I am this and this belongs to me. And then Ragadvesha. If you don't get something, you get angry, and then you have craving for a lot of things. And this process, you have karma prabrati, and then sansarana, dukkha parampara. And then, he mentioned, Isa Srishtam idam dvaitam sarvam uktam samasatah. Remember, until now, the last one is moha, because which jiva is responsible for his lack of freedom. But until now, everything that is mentioned is actually value neutral. God has created us. That we are in chains. Like Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, man is born free but everywhere in chains. We are in chains because there is a structural condition because of which we are in a bad situation. No, not only human beings. Essentially, this is our own creation because we are not realizing what is our spiritual swarupa. So, this Ishvara Srishta, this whole thing, Panchabhuta, you have a Annamaya Kosha, these are Pranamaya Kosha, they're value neutral. You are breathing. That's not a cause of your misery. You have a body, it's not the cause of your misery. Your mind is the cause of your misery. Our mind which jumps around is causing problems to us. And then second one is that this Ishvara Srishta Dvaita, which is kind of value neutral, which can in fact be a platform or springboard for us to explore our Swarupa. We get stuck with our faulty understanding because of the Moho Shakti of Maya, and therefore we are on a downward slide. Yeah. So we have to place our misery in a proper causal context. And the causal context is that we are biologically human beings. Maybe the animals can say that, not us. God has given much more than that we deserve. But we have made a mockery of the great privilege God has given us. And then we could actually practice dharma and look for happiness and self realization Instead, we have craving and then we are fighting with each other. We have converted what would have been a beautiful story into a sad story. Done. And then we are going to the Saptana Brahmana, the Jiva Srishti. Yeah. Now let's look at the first one. Evam Ishvara Srishtim Sankhepatah Nirupya, having summarily discussed about Ishvara Srishti, Pramana Purasharam, Jiva Srishtim Bibrunoti Sapteti. Now he's saying how the Jiva, what is Jiva Srishti? There is a God given reality, and how we convert that God given reality into a human reality, a human predicament marked by uncertainty, by pain, by craving, by forgetfulness of our Swarupa, and we are trapped here. That beautifully he mentions. Saptana Brahmane Dvaitam Jiva Srishtam Prapanchitam Annani Sapta Jnanena Karmana Janayat Pita. Karmana Ajanayat, because there is a avagraha there. Saptana Brahmane. It's actually 1, 5, 1, 2, 3 mantras of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Jat saptanani medhaya tapasa janayat pita iti arabde. Ishvara created us Pita. Pita is who? Prajapati. Who is he? Hiranyagarbha. He is the Karya Brahma. He is the first product of Ishvara. You have, Suddha Brahman. Then you have Maya Upadhi. That is Ishvara. Omniscient, omnipresent. And he is also eternal. And then he creates Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati. Then these Panchatanmatras, he gives him, you want to do something with it. Then he starts creating whole sansara with this. Yeah, that is how he creates. And he creates the Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas from the Sukshma Bhutas, Tanamatras. We have already done it, so I don't want to revisit that. Saptana, first we have to crack this whole word. What is called Saptana? Brahmana is a particular sequence of verses. That section of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is referred to as Brahmana, one section of the Upanishad. Now we have to crack this. What do you mean by Saptana Brahmana? Means Saptana Vishaya Samandhya set of verses, mantras, Saptana Brahmana. There, Brahmane, Dvaitam, is creating this duality, this samsara, this diverse world. Jiva system prapanchitam. In Saptana Brahmana, how the jiva creates this material reality and gives it a human touch, which is in fact the mother cause of his misery, his vulnerability, his confusion during his lifetime. How is it created? That is explained there. Why is he discussing all this with us? Because he started with this, you remember in the previous chapter, that Jiva Srishta and Ishvara Srishta, Jiva Srishti is sadhaka, not badhaka. Jiva Srishti is badhaka. And he's creating that this Srishti is of two kinds. By Srishti, we are essentially seeing Nama and Rupa. With that, we create diversity. So, this material reality marked by an element of diversity and multiplicity, one is God given, the other one is reshaped by us with our sankalpa, vikalpa, with all our jnana and karma. Yeah. What is if you look at this commentary, how the jiva creates the samsara is saying jnanena karmana, janay ajanayat pita. ज्ञान एंड कर्म से पिता ने बनाया. हु इज द पिता हियर? द हिरण्यगर्भ प्रजापति. That is at the samasti level, the collective level, and at the mini micro level is the jiva. At one level is that providence, prajapati, the divinely ordained creator creates the samsara for us, and then we reshape it with our own understanding. It's like sometimes you apply for housing project where they give you a core house. They don't give you the details. So it's a core house. Many government sponsored housing schemes where they give you, okay, 3 bedroom flat, you have some area around it. It's like you can have a tiny bungalow, but they don't construct the whole thing. They give you the core house. What is the purpose? They give you position of the land and the basic structure. They ensure the safety and stuff like that. But then you have to use this core house to build your own house, which can actually look significantly different from the core house. And then if there is a row of 20 core houses on the left and the right, these 40 houses can look completely different from each other, even though the core structure is same. Why am I saying this? Because what God has created is just a basic structure, and we, in fact, are working out the details with jnana and karma. Let's look at how it's explained. Yat saptanani medhaya tapasa ajanayat pita. Medha and tapasya. Why? Because God doesn't work with hammer and tongue. He doesn't work like us. It's just because we have already discussed this Krama Srishti and Sankalpatmaka Srishti, that we have done it already in the beginning. So, Medhaya Tapasa, which is sharp brain, and which is Tapasya, is meditation. Ajanayat Pita iti Aravadhe starts with Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 152. Brihad Aranyaka Andaragata Saptana Brahmane. This is the context. Textual contextuality is provided. Jiva system, Jaya me syad, ityadi. Let me have a wife. I mean, if you want to have children, how do you have children? You need a wife. If you look at these lone young male lions who are moving, what are they looking for? They're looking for a lion pride. What are they going to do? So you have so many stories, yeah, in the wildlife channels or in the YouTube videos. They look for lion prides. And prides will have lionesses and their kids. So they will attack the captain, the male lion, who's the stud guy in the pride, and have a fight. It could be a single male or it could be two males, but they have a fight. The intruder and the reigning king, the lion king, they have a fight. The guy who is an intruder, if he loses, he goes away. But he keeps looking for a lion pride because he wants to extend himself through children. So if he wins, what he does? He kills the cubs so that the lioness shall be willing to mate and have children. That's what he does. Jai me shad, let me have a wife. Jai me shad ityadi kama sadhana bhutabhyam jnana karmabhyam. So first what you have? Janati, ichhati, yatate, karoti. That is how anything happens. You need to know what is it. Then you want to wish. Then yatate, you have to do yatna, persevere on this, and then you will be able to accomplish it. Similarly, jnana and karma, therefore, first is the cognitive act, and then you have the cognitive thing. You decide, let me do it, and then you have to make efforts. Jnana and karma. Prayuktena jivena ishvara srishti भोग्य जातस्य सप्तधा परिकल्पितम द्वैतम अहम उपासको अन्य उपास्य देव अन्यः इत्यादि भेद बुद्धि विशिष्टम प्रकरणम प्रचितम. See, Jiva creates this whole sansara with the Bheda Buddhi. Even Prajapati creates this sansara with some kind of Bheda Buddhi. He wants to create. So there was this whole idea about Satarupa, a very funny story in Vidyaranya Upanishad, in how the whole world was created. That Satarupa, he creates out of himself. Remember, these are stories and don't confuse them as real ones, because then Some Western interpreters will say, do you know there is a bit of incest in this whole idea? Because you create this female body, and then she, out of shame, because he's the father, she runs away and she becomes a deer, and he becomes a deer, and she becomes a lioness, and he becomes a lion. And that's how he meets with her again and again in different names and forms, and then she gives birth, and that's how this whole world has come to be, with a lot of diversity. Starts with one guy, but this is very metaphoric. The purpose is not to see this as a real story of creation. The purpose is, in fact, to understand what is this metaphorical imagination about creativity, because something has to start somewhere there. Even in quantum physics, if you discuss as to how the whole world came, what are they talking about? They're saying there is some primitive vibration. There is no particle as such. The particle is not having any mass or anything. There is intensification of some charged particles, and that's how that excitement, and then this whole diversity comes about. How did the periodic table came into being? What was there in the sun? Helium, hydrogen, not the whole periodic table. So wherever you go, you always have, from unity to diversity, this unfoldment that happens, and there are different ways in which this unfoldment is explained. Therefore, here he's saying jame shad ityadi kama sadhanavutta, sankalpatmaka, kama sadhanavutta. And if you have a desire, what do you need? You need jnana and karma, jnana karma abhyam prayuktena jivena. And remember, there is another interesting thing, because Prajapati himself, how did he become Prajapati? Who is Prajapati? Is he God? No, he's a jiva. See, Brahmadi Stambha Paryanta, even Brahma has a limited lifetime, be 3.11 trillion years, but then end of the day, when you have Mahapralaya, he also gets terminated. And there is a beautiful story where Brahmaji went to meet Lord Vishnu, and somebody says, Brahmaji has come. And Lord Vishnu was taking rest, and he said, which Brahma? Because they are creations, they are timelines. He is the beginning and end of everything. And Brahmaji is an episodic reality. So there are so many other stories. Once Brahmaji wanted to go on leave, he wanted to go on a strike. So he refused to do creation work. And then he saw that there was a whole, series of bullock carts are going, and on each cart, Q's box. He said he saw one guy is leading all these carts pulled by horses, and he said, "Who are you, and what are you carrying?" He said, "I'm carrying all these Brahmas. There are 36 of them. Lord Vishnu wants to hold an interview as to who is going to be the Brahma or Prajapati for the next cycle of creation of Prajapati. Oh my God, my job is in trouble. My God, I'm going to get fired. Immediately join job." Essentially, Brahma is a jiva. So he said the collective level. So he's saying jatasya, and he's saying jnana karma prayuktena jivena ishvara srishta bhogya jatasya saptada. God creates the basic things, but then this arnava, that you see, he will explain it further as we move forward. So there are the stories in Upanishads that God creates the devatas, and the devatas is okay, who go and live in these animal bodies, like of a goat or a cow or something. He said, no, but this is not a good body in which we can live. We are not happy with this. And then finally, he creates a human being. He said, would you like to live in this frame? They're saying, oh, yeah, we're happy. It looks like a fuller thing. This is a good house for us to live. So, in fact, they are living in us, these Indriya Devatas, because they're happy with this framework, the body mind complex. We do not know how to connect with that divinity. That's our problem. We are more connected with the Asuric nature, as Bhagavad Gita says, the lower nature. Saptadha parikalpitam dvaitam aham upasako anya upasya upasaka upasya. He does meditation to get things. We worship God. Once you turn into Vedanta, there is no upasya, no upasaka. Because there would be still some duality, some loss, some emotional thing. Then say, but what is so funny about it? Is the last thing? No, you need bhakti and everything, but ultimately, when you go to that level of self-awareness, self-realization, atmic jnana, you're no more that emotional. You're no more a Mira. You're no more Chaitanya. They are all great souls, embodiments of divinity. But in the path of Vedanta, bhakti is one essential part of this whole sadhana. But ultimately, when you are establishing atmic jnana, this emotional, the bubbles that you allow in yourself, they don't fascinate you anymore. You become quieter. You become self-aware. अहम उपासको अन्यो उपास्य देवो अन्यः इत्यादि भेद बुद्धि विशिष्टम प्रकरणम प्रपंचितम. So this is how भेद बुद्धि. You have to have this भेद बुद्धि. I'm different from Atma. Therefore, I have karta bhokta feeling. I'm the creator. I would like to enjoy it. एतेन तत्सृष्टेः जीवस्य तत्सृष्टुत्वस्य च प्रमितत्वम उक्तम. First thing is, we have jiva is created by God, and then jiva also becomes a creator. Yeah. And then you have this pita swarupa palaka. At a collective level is hiranyagarbha, at a micro level is the jiva. Prapanchana prakaramaha, how is it explained? He explains annani iti. He creates these bhogya vastus. How will the jivas live if they don't get? How will the devatas live? He's explaining. How will the animals live? Pita paluko jiva jnanena swabudhi kausalena karmana adrishta dvara saptannani ajanayat. You know, the beauty of Sanskrit is that in a few words, they tell you 20 pages of, they, capture it in just one sentence. Pita means palaka, the sustainer. Remember, the macro level you have Prajapati, but what happens to a family? You're heading a family. What about us? Who arranges the world around us? Who is the Pita? Who is the Palaka? We ourselves. We take so much of a responsibility. And then Jiva, and how do we do it? Jnanena. What do you mean by Jnana? So buddhi kaulasena. Now, kausalena. Now, this Jnana is not Atma Jnana. We'll further understand it. Swabuddhi means that limited jnana we have. Moho yukta jnanena, vishaya jnanena. So you have this subject-object duality with that kind of an understanding. Because already we are trapped in this, we are doing Dvaita Viveka Prakarana. Kaushalena karmana adrishta dvara. Are we doing it only with jnana, whatever we plan? No, no. There is a load of prarabdha at our back. So combined with these two, he's saying, Kausalena karmana adrishtva dvara saptannani, 7 arnas we create. Jivasya samyak paryalochanena sarvaloka bhoganukula jagad utpadanena sarvaloka palakatvad tasyeva pitritve nirdesa iti tatparyam. You are the father of some children. These days people have just one or two. But just imagine few decades before, people used to have 3, 4, 5, 6 children at one house. The father is responsible for addressing the needs of all. And Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati is creating the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the human kingdom. Yeah, all of us. And we have differential needs, we have differential abilities. So he creates food for us to sustain us. Having properly analyzed it, he creates Sarva Loka Bhoganukula. It should be conducive to the fulfillment of needs of all. This is a beautiful sentence on socialism, isn't it? It's very inclusive, socialistic. God is very socialistic. Anukula Jagad Utpadanena Sarvaloka Palakatvata Seva Pitrute. Now the beauty is here. God is concerned with all of us. But we, those of us who are in decision making process, we are concerned with our own selfish interests. As you remember, John Rousseau mentioned, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his book Social Contract, explained that the biggest problem was lack of public spirit. That is the problem. Why we're not happy? Because we essentially it's private selfish interest, which is, you know, presenting itself, or it's presented as public spirit. You look at what is happening internationally. It's all selfish interest, nothing to do. What do you mean by global order? It's global order of ragadvesha, where it's powerful countries trying to, great powers trying to subjugate others. Who cares for poor countries? Everybody wants an exceptionalism relative to their own magnified self-interest. Therefore, he's saying jivasya samyak paryalochanena sarvaloka bhoganukula jagat utpadanena sarva lokapalakatvad, because he is the sustainer of all, tasyeva pitritve nirdesa iti tatparyam. Therefore, Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati creates all of us and creates saptanas. What are the saptanas? We have 3 minutes, let's look at it. The deeper analysis we will do on Saturday when we meet again. Saptan उत्पादकत्वस्य ज्ञानपूर्वकत्वं प्रतिनियत विभाग प्रदर्शन पूर्वकम विसदयति मर्त्येति. You have to have some rules and regulations for all, and that should be equally applicable to them. So he creates saptana, 7 kinds of foods. Utpadakatva, how is it created? What is the principle of this whole creation of foods, bhogya padartha for all? Jnana purvakatvasya. This process of creation is supported by awareness, by analysis, some cognitive functionality. And he's explaining the rules there. Martyanamekam devanne dve paswannam chaturdhakam anyas tritayamatmartham annanam vinayojanam. Martyanam ekam, sadharana anna. Martya, mortals. They need some food, is it? What do they need? They need a lot of things, human beings. We are all mortals. We need some general food. It could be rice and some fruits and vegetables and all that. But arna is bhogya padartha. What about house and car and this? They are all part of arna only. Whatever sustains it, bhogya thing. And what about gods? Devane dve. He will say darsha and purnamasha. Darsha Purnamasabhyam Swarga Kama Yajeta is the Veda Vakya. You want to go to heaven, you have to Darsha Yajna and Purnamasa Yajna. There were certain sacrifices done. Darsha means on the Amavasya, new moon night, and then on the full moon night. And then Anuyaja Prayaja, there are 2 sets of more sacrifices done in between. Anuyaja Prayaja, the whole cycle is complete. Darsha and Purnamasha. And there are very details in Mimamsa Darshan is discussed. So, Devane Dve, there are 2. What is these 2? One is Darsha, the sacrifices on Darsha, the other one is on Purnamasha. 2 kinds of sacrifices. Paswannam Chaturthakam, what is the 4th one? So, because already we have 3, right? One is Sadharana, Martyarna, second one, 2 for the gods, third one, Paswannam. That is actually milk. General, Paswarnam Chaturthakam, that is the 4th one. By milk, what do you mean? Because if you look at all the mammalians, when they're born, what do they rely on? Mother's milk. What do the human beings rely on? Milk. Yeah? So in the beginning, so that is the Paswarna. And then Anyaha Tritayaha, what are the other 3? Atmartham, Annanang, Vinayojanam. These 3 are manas, yeah? Vak, manas, and prana. This Atma kept it for itself. Why? I'll tell you. This will be discussed one by one. So, just I will read and explain this much because we will do the more deeper analysis and also the other verses when we meet again Saturday. Teshu ekamatyanam tad adhinam arnam sarvam sarvamatya sadharanam arnam. That is common to all of us. Anybody who is a mortal needs some food. Devane dve, devana 2, chaturthakam and paswannam paswadhinam, which is in the domain, it belongs to the domain of the animals. Sarvam avisheshana pasyati iti pashu. Why they are called pashu? Because you see, the animals don't distinguish between X, Y, Z, and then there is some research going on. Many of the animals, in fact, don't see colors. We human beings see colors. They see in black and white, shadow and bright. Anyad avasishtam tritayam atamartham atma bhogaya kalpitam. It's for yourself. What are these? Vak. If you don't have the ability to speak, how will you describe the whole world? Anything. You need food, you have to order food, you need the ability to speak, and then you need to think. You want to express yourself, you need to be able to think. Manas, and then prana, you should be able to breathe. So these are internal requirements for you to be here. These are principles of sustenance. Therefore, these are also evam annanam saptanam viniyojanam viniyoga atmartham saptana brahmanena uktaha. So this is mentioned saptana brahmana.